So this is the work of Jerry Uelsmann. And Jerry Uelsmann, are you all seeing this now? We went to you all see a bunch of different little images. Can somebody give me a thumbs up or something?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, great. All right, so this is the work of Jerry Uelsmann. Jerry Uelsmann's an interesting guy. He taught at Florida State University. He's dead now, for years. His work, he made this work before Photoshop. So the work you're looking at was done in a darkroom. And that doesn't seem, for some of you, you don't understand why that's important, but if you ever work in a darkroom, you'll know it was shot with film. He had to process that film. He had to go into the darkroom and use an enlarger to make prints. And these photographs are technically just pretty amazing because he was able to do that. And the amount of work is required to do an image like this working in a darkroom is extremely labor intensive. You know, hours and hours to get this image. Not just the thoughts and, you know, not just the planning for it, the picking out of the images that you're going to combine and all that, but literally the time in the darkroom, cutting masks, flipping things, copying negatives and making them so that you can make an image like this. An image like this, you know, today using Photoshop and even the limited amount I've shown you, you could probably make this images if you had the pieces. I mean, one, it's in black and white, so that makes it easier to begin with. But if I gave you the source material, the photographs, literally we could make this photograph in 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops. So, you know, the fact that he was doing this in a dark room for days working on an image was its own thing then. But what's interesting to me, and the reason why I give you all that, is because even though I could still make this image now in about 15, 20 minutes, plus the hours of thought and learning the language and all that, is that these images still hold together pretty well. They are still interesting images. Not all of them by any means. And just like most artists, not all their work is great, but a number of them are really good. And, you know, I think that's the important part. Not just, you know, in his time, he was sort of a darkroom wizard, which brought its own sort of fame. But I think like Diana Arbus, his images sort of stand the test of time. So when we look at them, there's still something interesting to them. There's still something that we can take from them as we move forward, making our own work or having our own ideas. There's still his ability to affect another generation of artists of how they're thinking. And that's the important part of being an artist is are you part of the dialogue? Do you kind of hit culture in a way that makes it move? And I think his work did that and probably still continues to do that. So an image like this, you know, the boat's a little hokey to me. I don't know, this rowboat he uses a lot. So it must have been a photograph that he liked or an easy one to use. I'm not sure. But, you know, the boat sort of floating. But I really love the way he's sort of taken this negative and Rorschached it, you know, butterflied it, copied it and inverted, you know, all those sorts of things. And again, so easy for us to be able to do using Photoshop today, but really nicely done, you know, a really well done thing. Now, what makes it work, so there's the background. And a lot of people might just do that. And so when I'm giving you your critiques, I'm going, you know, this is a good background. This is interesting, but there's just nothing to it. It's because you've seen so many of those landscapes. And even in the last critiques, if you look, I'll say, well, this is really kind of an interesting photograph. I hope you consider it for the Jerry Uelsmann thing. So that's what I'm talking about as we go through is how you might be able to use some of those images that you've already taken or that you've shown and think about them as source material for this project. And I'll talk about that when we get to the assignment itself. But, you know, he's taken this this image, he's split it, duplicated, and flipped it. Then he's come back in with this boat and sort of floated it here in the air and this single person. Now, the thing about flipping it automatically creates this symmetry, the way these mountains sort of open up. It looks like this passage. The boat, a little goofy to me. I don't know if I'd like it with nothing, but I think something other than the boat could have been more interesting. So, it's called Voyager. I guess, there's something in there, but I don't know. I really like it, except for the boat just sort of bothers me. But the rest of it's so well done. An image like this, again, kind of interesting. And when we talk about fading and using Photoshop to feather images in. So here's this house that's been feathered into this tree stump, and here's this tree stump that looks much bigger, so this background has been feathered in, probably this image. Well, I don't know. I don't know how many pieces this is. But again, not a difficult one for you to make today. This one's just not that interesting. Taking the ceiling off of an image and opening it up to the sky. Again, this sort of splitting of the negative, so you get this very symmetrical, but this floating sort of tree with another tree on the bottom to make it look like roots. And I don't get what the pea pod is. I would have left that out and just gone with the island. Sometimes I think he overdoes things, because that thing. Again, you see this image split. This one's been inverted so that instead of being a positive image, it's a negative image. These people have been brought in silhouette, and not a bad photograph. This could never exist, which is why her arm looks a little wiggy, that doesn't exactly look like the way an arm would turn, but you'd never be able to get such a shallow depth of field on this hand and the face in focus all at the same time. So this is shot one way, and then, this arm is brought up, and, and then dropping another image in on the hand. Pretty simple one, here's one image, here's probably a second image, and then this rock sort of dropped in. Now, when we look at these images, these are images that are created. You don't take your camera out and find them. You may have to go out and look for this one. So many of you have shot this road, which is, an interesting photograph. I don't know. The lips don't do much for me. We saw, can't I think of his name right now? The guy who had his face in a hole, basically the same thing, but it was like a Kyle Thompson. His face down here, like his nose just below the water. So you can think about what it is that you might set into the road, something that would stand out. And again, it's that unusual juxtaposition of things. We saw the video did I show it to you this week, last week, on surrealism and that idea, this feels much more surreal or Dada. It doesn't make sense. The word that people use today is random, or at least they were. It used to be Dada, things that just sort of came out of nowhere. It's like, dreamlike, how all of a sudden you're with your family and they turn into the Obamas or some TV show family or whatever. It's that juxtaposition, those things back and forth that don't make sense. You'll see coming up again and again in his photographs. Again, the mirrored image, the positive and negative, the slightly off, all of those things playing out. This one's just dumb. This one a lot, the water being the sky, what looks like the Norman Bates house up there, compositionally very well done. Again, another mirrored image here of this tree that sort of creates this, I don't know if it's a king or a queen or some kind of royal looking person here, which I'm sure was dropped in, but, the tree probably lent itself to that sort of look, fairies and angels. And, so again, playing off the surreal, playing off the dreamlike, here you have this very subtle landscape, but these hands, with this sort of drop of this idea of serenity, or they're God's hands, or, using ghost images. So that idea of something that is going away, playing off of myths, or, some are poetic, some feel like little short stories. There's it's like a fable or something like that. You know, it's playing off this thing and doing it so well that you kind of believe it, even though you know it can't be. You know, it's the story of Jack and the Beanstalk and all of those kinds of things that bring images to mind that sort of inform us as human beings, but we know they're not real, but we like the story. We like the idea that that could have happened. You know, taking an image like this, and here's another rowboat, and using this shadow to make it look like it's floating. If that shadow weren't there, it just looked like the boat were in a sort of still pond. We might be wondering where the reflection in the water is. Like this house here has this reflection, which makes it look like it's in the water. So it's closer, but the shadow underneath makes it look like it's hovering. So it's paying attention to those types of things. Again, you know, another mirrored image of top and bottom. You know, this person's not reflected down here in the water, which is kind of interesting. So I would hope that you would take some time to go through the Uelsmann photographs. I don't know, I might go through a few more of them later in the week, come back to them, revisit them, talk about them a little bit more. But I'd like you to take a look at these. You know, this one just bugs me. It looks like some house from The Hobbit or something like that. You know, I think the more subtle images work better for me. The ones that, you know, but again, I'm going to respond to things differently than you do. So you have to decide what it is that is working for you. And you know, Jerry Uelsmann, like I said, sort of an older guy. You can see this one's from 1963. It's actually the year I was born. So, you know, those are pretty old. But he was working up until the 2008s, 2010s. This one's from 61, even before I was born. You know, come on. An eye in a toilet, that's pretty simple. If you were to make that, I'd be like, really? This is all you could come up with? Yeah, it's funny, but it's kind of a one-liner. But again, in 1961, it was kind of new. It was kind of shocking. It was like, wow, how did he do that? Photoshop didn't exist. All of those sorts of things coming into play. So anyways, I'd hope that you take a look at the work of Jerry Uelsmann. But I'm going to go back now and talk about the assignment. So now that you've seen his work, that is, they don't have to be exactly like that, but I want you to create two images in the style of Jerry Uelsmann that, you know, create an idea, a dream, a perception, a fear, something, you know, or something that makes you happy. What is that? You know, and you should compose these images using a minimum of 4 of your own photos. So each image should have pieces from at least 4 other photos. So, and this is a little bit of how to go about it. You know, you have to come up with an idea first. Now, that idea may come from looking at your images and going, oh, I like this piece, I like this piece. What if I combine those? You know, so that car that you really like coming down the road, what if, I don't know, I have such a tough time with cars, but what if that car were floating in the sky? I don't know, you know, if instead of his rowboat, you replaced it with your car coming through, how does that change it? What do those things, when we talk about signifiers, what do those objects, what is the meaning of those objects? How do they make us think or feel about something? So, you know, whether you want to sit down with images you have or think of an idea and then create your shooting list, what you need to go out and photograph, then that's what you need to do. For this assignment, you'll turn in 2 contact sheets, 1 proof sheet with the images that you use, so your source material, and then 1 proof sheet with your photos that you actually made. So 1 image has the composite images, the 2 images, and the other one, and you can turn them in separately. They don't have to be a contact sheet for both. You know, you can turn in 2 separate images if you want it, but a contact sheet with the images that you use to create those. So that's what the assignment is. All right.